We're reading from $40 Million Slave. We're continuing to read from the chapter. What's the chapter? $40 Million Slaves. So that's the chapter, $40 Million Slaves. I thought I was reading from the chapter, The Dilemma of Inclusion Without Power. Yeah. The dilemma of inclusion without power. That's the chapter. So let's finish. Let's get into it. If you hear any noise in the background, I'm in, I guess it's the hood. Jamaica, Queens. It's not really the hood. A lot of immigrants, but the immigrants are adapting hood. Their children are adapting hood behavior. I'm sure that's not what they came here, put them in school here for, but it happens. All right, let's go. Another school of thought about the game is that Bryant knew USC was a much stronger team, but felt the only way he could make a case for integrating his program was to have his team humiliated by a Trojan team that was heavily laden with black players. Cunningham doesn't completely dismiss this idea. The powers that be who set the game up must have known that something was going to happen. Fortunately, it happened to help the Bear get where he needed to get. In fact, what stung Alabamans more than Cunningham and what escalated the tide of change was the performance of Clarence Davis, the Trojan senior tailback, who was born in Alabama. He was born in Bessemer, right outside of Birmingham. His family moved to New York in 1958, then moved to California 2 years later. Davis was 14 years old in 1963 when a bomb ripped through the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, killing 4 girls and stunning the nation. Davis's mother knew the mother of one of the children. The public's fascination with his return to Birmingham 7 years later playing for USC reflected their ambivalence toward black people, which became more troublesome as black athletes became more prominent and more vital to the sport. The peculiar fascination with Davis reflected the way sport-crazed Southerners were struggling with race. On one hand, they were steeped in the white South's revulsion at the presence of blacks. But on the other hand, they couldn't suppress their admiration of and need for the black physical presence. It was writ large in the South in 1966. But it's a paradigm that continues to define the dilemma of race and racism in sports in the United States. Behind the cheering often lurks angry resentment. A couple of things to say. This is always the case, where the typical, what they call everyday black person gets no respect. But the same person that will disrespect you loves LeBron James, Michael Jordan. I always, when I see these videos where LeBron James comes and sits next to a white fan, and they freak out. Oh, it's LeBron James. It's LeBron James. It's LeBron James. Oh my God, I'm sitting next to LeBron James. Or, oh, it's Jay-Z. Oh, it's Beyonce. I'm sitting next to Beyonce. I'm sitting next to Beyonce. It's particularly those white people, because those white people that sit next to them have money or know somebody who has money, which means they have social capital. How do they treat the typical black person going to work, coming home from work? It always is in my mind when I see that. That's one. Too early in my reading, one of the things that happens when you say, well, black people come into an area and a lot of white people get upset because they say, well, they're displacing us. All these black athletes pushed out white athletes. Sure. But I don't think those white athletes disappeared. I think a lot of those white athletes went higher up in organizations. You got to remember, there were, back in the day, even in my time, I'm 52 years old, there weren't all these coaches. You had a head coach in football and you had an assistant coach. That's it. You didn't have, I don't remember you having, when I was really young, this came later, a receivers coach, a quarterback coach, a running back coach, a linebacker coach, a defensive line coach, an offensive line coach. You have all these coaches now. I don't remember offensive coordinator being up in the booth and then an offensive head coach down on the field too. So what they do is create other jobs somewhere else for white folks, always in a higher position. Front office people. You had an owner. You probably had a general manager. Now you have a president of operations. You have a general manager. You have a vice assistant general managers, his staff, or general manager, his staff. You have a president of operations, which means you probably got a vice president of operations. You have all these things in athletics that wasn't there. So when all these black athletes came in, pushed white people right on up the thing. Now you have something called analytic specialists, film study specialists that work in the organization. You have doctors, you have trainers. And if you go through football teams, even basketball teams, it's curious. Go through all those positions and look. Take any team. NBA, you might see more black faces than that, but more than likely, when you go through all the positions in teams in sports, and all the positions I'm naming, all the extra coaches, all the extra administrators, look at the staff. Go to the NFL.com and look at their staff. I know for a fact there ain't but one or two black people in the NFL in that position or anywhere. I know some of them. So I know what they look like. So I just wanted to say that. So the thing is, when black people celebrate being able to get in somewhere, sure, but the people that you replace are above you. That's usually how it works. The person who may have derived the most enjoyment out of the afternoon was Davis's mother, Maria Davis. She flew from California to bask in the excitement of a game that many blacks in Alabama thought would never happen. It was her first trip back to the state she'd left in 1958. I was excited, I was happy, she recalled. Mrs. Davis understood that what she was watching, what it meant, why this game was important. She wanted to savor every second. It was very important. It was a very important game for me, she said. When we lived there, we couldn't play the white team, she recalled. You played black schools to look to see how the changes had come. That was something. Maria Davis was born in Livingston, Alabama on October 8, 1929. She was 5 years old when her family moved to Birmingham. Mrs. Davis had tried to shield her son as much as possible from the mental scourge of segregation. That meant avoiding public transportation as much as possible. We always had a car. Black people still do this. Ms. Davis said, when we went places, we were in the car, and they were too small to know how the people were there, how the blacks had certain places to sit. They never experienced that. They were too small to wonder why the whites didn't go to the same school they went to. Black parents are still doing this, and you have a lot of young black people who are crashing because they're running into, even though the empire is crumbling, there's still residue from systemic racism. So you come into a system or you come into a thing, even if the system or the institution is breaking down, those people that were there still exist. So let's say you go from a organization that was public, now it's a non-for-profit. The people who was running that, the highest level, now they're running the non-for-profit. And that attitude went with them. Remember, systems and institutions are run by people. That's why just blaming the systems doesn't make sense, like the system is some thing in and of itself. No, the system, the people in there are a problem. The people in institutions are a problem. That's why I created the Connerson Center. It's because it's me. It's an institution. It's just I know how to do justice. I can't get justice outside of me. I can't get it everywhere. I can't ensure it. I want knowledge. I like knowledge. I like real information from primary sources. Not gonna get that everywhere. I can't force this everywhere. You think I could teach in the school system? Watch my videos. They never let me in there. They kicked me out for teaching too much 20 years ago. You think they would let this? No. They would never let this go. First of all, who's reading this in the school system? The one you sending your children to. But I'm sure parents don't care. As long as your child goes along to get along. Like you went along to get along. But what you don't realize is there are no more rewards for that anymore, or very little. And the little rewards for going along to get along, colored immigrants are taking that. Asians, Africans from the continent, rather they be Nigerians, Ghanaians, West Indians still taking it. I've had a lot of conversations with Guyanese people, very interesting people, very, everybody's hard worker, very shrewd. They know what's going on. It's amazing. Her schools were all black. She had to sit in the back of the bus. When Clarence was born, he never rode on the bus, but one time in his life, back there in the South, he didn't know about this because he moved to New York. She was a housewife in Birmingham. Her husband didn't allow her to work. He was a good provider, Mrs. Davis said. We had our difficulties, which I didn't want my children to be involved in. The USC-Alabama game was the second time Clarence Davis had returned to Alabama since he was 7. He'd come back for his father's funeral at age 16. The people wanted to see him because this was his home, and he was playing with SC. The team stayed out in the suburbs. They couldn't come out of the rooms. The food was served in their rooms, Miss Davis recalled. We're going to stop there, but I'm telling you, there's another thing. You hear a lot of black people say they want to go back to the Jim Crow era because there was a time when men could provide. Well, we're living in a time where everybody works. Men, women, even white women work. White men work. Everybody works. You have to work. And in reality, everyone should work. And house workers work. But this whole idea of men going out to provide, first of all, it's weird. Black families lived like this, but they lived like this back then because there were jobs for black men because you separated everything. Segregation actually created jobs for black people because you had to do certain things. You had to have black cops to be on the black side of town. You had to have black retail workers to be on the black side of town. Everything was segregated. You had to have black people to clean the black bathrooms. You had to have black people. Just think about it. You have black bathrooms. You can have, just say you deliver toilet tissue. You could have a business. You would get the contract. Once they integrated, now you can have a white person doing everything. And a lot of the black people got laid off. One of the worst things they said happened in the school system is when you got rid of, when you integrated, most of the black educators lost their jobs. Most of the black principals lost their jobs because now we're busing black kids over into white schools. And they would hire like one black teacher, 2 black teachers. It's the same thing. The one thing you have to always understand is communities create institutions for themselves. they cannot then fill up their institutions with other communities' people. That's why every community has its own institutions. Institutions don't have to be big and large. This is what black people don't understand. You can have small institutions. And matter of fact, it's better to have a bunch of small ones than 2 or 3 big ones. So I'll give you an example before I go on. You'll often hear black people of a certain age talk about the basement parties. One of my friends, his grandfather, they had a nice basement and had a bar in it. His grandfather built a bar in it, and he actually built an extra dining room onto the kitchen. He was good. He was a carpenter, military man, of course. So he built a bar downstairs, and they would have parties. And on the weekends, you sell a little chicken, you sell a little fish, you sell the alcohol. People come in, they dance, they have a good time. That was a way for people to club, to do what everybody's talking about, keeping the money in the neighborhood. My friend's grandparents could make good money. Sometimes you would use that money, you would have rent parties where, okay, this weekend we're going to take all the money we make and we're going to give it to so-and-so because her rent is due. That's what people want back when they say they want to go back to those times. They don't want the horror back. They don't want the lynching back. But let's be honest, that stuff never left. We're still being lynched in old ways and new ways. So, no, people don't want Jim Crow. We do want to move on, but that sense of unity or that sense of ingenuity, I think it's coming back somewhat. But for some reason, I can't figure out why, it's hard to get black people to use their homes to do business. Like, they could run a business out of the home if it's like shipping and, Eve stores. But it's hard to get them to use their basement to do parties. It's hard to get them to do things on that level. And I don't know if they don't want people in their homes. Some people's homes are not fit because they're not clean. I've seen that. But I think we all better get it together. Right? We all better get it together. I'm still trying to figure out how to get a wagon or get a cart so that I could sell stuff from my other business out in the street. And I'm coming up with something. I'm getting there. I'm getting close to something. I got an idea. So if I live long enough, I will be talking about it. You'll hear about it. And I might be going to a perfect place if I'm going. Either way, there are 2 apartments I think I might be getting into. Either way, either one of them is going to be perfect for my other business, which sells really like handmade products and stuff like that. So until later, I didn't mean to go on this long, but until later, until next time, take care. And remember, patreon.com/Connerson Center. That's one of the links. Etsy.com/shop/Connerson Center. You can buy the things or you can subscribe. Either way you want to go. And I started making videos on my little On the Corner thing again. So that magazine, that periodical will be new issues of it, new volumes will be available again. I have to find some way to get out my nonfiction. And I really have to pick up my fiction again. Because my Novelia site has been paying. And I need to really feed them more work. I need to put up at least 2 to 3, well, it should be 3 short stories a week. I think I'm trying to get to that. So, until next time, please be safe and please take care.